and it's not easy. Cleveland's got an owner that's got strong opinions, especially at quarterback. But I said this with Shedeur Sanders. If you go to the end of last year, it was the 31st ranked offensive line, and he had more touchdowns than Josh Allen, same number as Darnold. I think Shedeur's going to be okay. In fact, I talked to an NFL general manager last night who told me, he said, I had him earmarked as a starting quarterback. Not a great one, but a starting quarterback. And I think they've had back-to-back-to-back good drafts. I've seen enough. I'm calling it a wrap. The Herd Newsroom is calling it in Ohio. By a landslide, Shedeur Sanders should be starting. We are calling Ohio as the projected winner in a race that is not as close as the fake news projected. You can keep selling me on Pickett. You can keep selling me on Dylan Gabriel.
Colin Cowherd is not saying Shedeur Sanders is already a superstar. He is saying the Browns may have found something real, and that alone changes the conversation. When an NFL general manager tells him Shedeur looked like a starting-level quarterback, this stops being just fan hype. That is why Cleveland suddenly feels like a real fit. Shedeur has poise, accuracy, and pressure experience, while Todd Monken has a history of adjusting to different quarterback styles. If Monken builds around what Shedeur does best, this situation could work better than people expected. The Browns do not need Shedeur to be perfect on day one. They need him to keep stacking good days, learn the offense, and prove he can run the team. And if he keeps doing that, the quarterback competition in Cleveland becomes impossible to ignore. This is where the Todd Monken angle becomes the real key. Albert Breer explaining Monken's background matters because Monken is not locked into one quarterback style. He's been around different types of quarterbacks and different types of offenses. He worked with Lamar Jackson in Baltimore, Stetson Bennett at Georgia, and Jameis Winston in Tampa Bay. Those are not the same players. They win in different ways. That means Monken understands how to shape an offense instead of forcing every quarterback to play the same way. And that could be huge for Shedeur. He's not Lamar. He's not a pure runner who changes the math with speed. He's not a chaos quarterback either. His game is more about timing, accuracy, toughness in the pocket, and staying calm when pressure arrives. If Monken sees that clearly, Cleveland can build around what Shedeur does best instead of asking him to become someone else. That is why this pairing could actually work.
I mean, I think this is going to be a real competition. I think Deshaun Watson has a shot to win it. And I think one thing that both those guys have going for them at the quarterback position is Todd Monken, dig into his history a little bit. He has won and been a part of offenses with lots of different types of quarterbacks.
This is why the Cleveland story is not going away. Shedeur is not being treated like some throwaway rookie who was only there to hold a clipboard. If the first 2 days of practice were described as Shedeur days, that means he made people notice. And once a young quarterback starts stacking good days, coaches have to pay attention. They may not crown him early, but they cannot ignore the film. That is also why Monken's role matters so much. He's not just watching who throws the prettiest ball in shorts, he's evaluating command, timing, decision-making, footwork, protection calls, and how quickly each quarterback processes the offense. If Shedeur is showing poise early, then Monken has a real decision to make. Not a media decision, not a fan decision, a football decision. And the biggest sign is that Deshaun had to respond. When a young quarterback pushes the room enough that veterans have to answer, the competition becomes real. That does not mean Shedeur has already won the job, but it does mean Cleveland has something serious happening. The Browns wanted competition, and Shedeur is making sure they actually get one.
I also can take it at face value, no doubt, where if he says Deshaun looks better than Shedeur, right? I trust the idea that Deshaun looked better than Shedeur. And I don't think that's a crazy thought, right? We expect days where Deshaun looks better than Shedeur. There's going to be the back and forth. There's a reason we are in a quarterback battle that is considered, tightly contested.
But this is where the story gets complicated, because being talented is not the same as being ready. Shedeur may have the tools, but the NFL learning curve is real. It's not just about throwing accurately or looking calm in a drill. A quarterback has to control protections, understand run-pass options, read pressure, shift the offense, manage the clock, and know where the ball should go before the defense fully shows itself. That is why Shedeur may not start immediately, even if the talent is obvious. Cleveland has to know if he can handle the mental side of the job. And this is exactly where Todd Monken can either speed up or slow down his growth. A good coach can simplify the early answers without limiting the quarterback. He can build confidence, protect the player from bad situations, and slowly expand the playbook as the quarterback proves he can handle more. For Shedeur, that's the difference between being thrown into chaos and being developed the right way. The Cleveland does not need to rush him just to satisfy the headlines, but they also cannot ignore him if he keeps showing he can handle more. The balance is everything.
I don't think it's crazy to think that Deshaun's ahead, especially in that type of department. Shedeur didn't have to do that in college. He's had 1 year where he's had to sort of do it in the NFL. Like, while we had Ethan Posick healthy, he was still handling the protection. So it's still a learning process for Shedeur early on in this, too.
The Browns may still try to manage the room carefully, but Shedeur has already done enough to make people notice. If he looked good in the first 2 days while Deshaun struggled, that matters. Not because 2 practices decide a season, but because every competition starts somewhere. And once the younger quarterback starts creating momentum, the pressure shifts to everybody else. That's the part Colin Cowherd seems to understand. Shedeur does not need to be perfect to become the story. He just needs to keep looking like the most composed and promising option in the room. If he keeps making clean reads, getting the ball out, and showing command, then Monken has to build a serious plan for him. The Browns cannot treat him like a side project if he keeps looking like a real option. And that is what makes Cleveland interesting. This is not just about one quarterback beating another in practice. This is about a franchise trying to figure out whether its future is sitting right there in the building, wearing a name that already brings pressure with it.
I look at it as Deshaun really struggled over those 2 days. Shedeur really looked good over the previous 2 days. And so today was about making sure Deshaun left the 6 weeks feeling good about himself and had a better chance. And so in order to do that, they had to put him with the ones.
This is where the Browns' quarterback situation starts to feel real. Todd Monken is not publicly closing the door on Shedeur Sanders. He is calling it a competition, and that word matters. Coaches do not always say that unless they want the room to feel open. If the job was already decided, Monken could easily frame it differently. Instead, the Browns are at least giving Shedeur a chance to prove he belongs in the conversation. That does not mean Monken is going to hand him the job. In fact, that would go against everything the Browns need right now. Cleveland needs the decision to be earned because the season cannot be built on hype. But if Shedeur is taking advantage of his chances, then the competition becomes more than a talking point. It becomes the first real test of Monken's Browns era. And for Shedeur, that is all he can ask for: a real shot, a real evaluation, a coach willing to judge what happens on the field instead of what happened on draft night.
First, Deshaun Watson, the Browns making that trade. Obviously, that hasn't gone well. Then with everything surrounding Shedeur Sanders last year, right now, at least publicly, Coach Todd Monken is saying it's a competition between the two.
This is exactly why Shedeur's path is complicated, but still possible. Fans want to see the young quarterback because he has upside, personality, and the kind of calm that makes people believe. But Todd Monken has to think like a coach. He cannot make the decision because the fans are loud. He cannot make it because Colin Cowherd likes the fit. He has to pick the quarterback who gives Cleveland the best chance to win. That is what makes this situation so dangerous for everyone else in the room. If Shedeur proves he is that guy, then the conversation changes fast. The fifth-round label will not protect the veterans. The depth chart will not matter. The only thing that will matter is whether he runs the offense better, protects the ball better, and gives Cleveland more life. And that is why Colin's take is not crazy. Cleveland and Shedeur can work if Monken gives him structure, if the Browns stay patient, and if Shedeur keeps showing the same poise that made evaluators believe he was more than a late-round pick.
My thought is, well, I would just play Shedeur Sanders because even if Deshaun's good, he's a free agent at the end of the year. You're not going to re-sign him. I don't know what Shedeur Sanders is. I mean, I don't know if he's good or not, but I'd like to see it. So I would rather play the young guy under team control, but obviously I'm not Todd Monken.
The real reason this could work is because Shedeur does not have to be a superhero on day one. Cleveland needs competence first. They need a quarterback who can run the offense, avoid disasters, keep drives alive, and let the team play winning football. If Shedeur can do that while growing inside Monken's system, then the Browns may not need him to be flashy right away. They just need him to be steady. And steady is exactly what Colin seems to believe Shedeur can become. He is not selling him as the next Mahomes. He is saying there's enough there to win games. That matters because the Browns do not need a social media quarterback. They need a real one. A player who can take coaching, survive pressure, handle criticism, and keep improving when the league starts testing him. That is why Todd Monken becomes the swing factor. If he sees Shedeur clearly, this could turn into one of the more interesting quarterback stories in the NFL. Monken has enough creativity to build around different strengths, and Shedeur has enough poise to make the experiment worth watching. That combination is why the Browns cannot dismiss this as hype anymore. So when Colin Cowherd says Cleveland and Shedeur Sanders could actually work, he's not just throwing out a headline. He is pointing to the one thing people keep missing. The right quarterback fit is not always about where a player was drafted. It's about timing, coaching, confidence, and whether the system gives him a real chance to grow. And that is why this Brown story is dangerous. If Shedeur struggles, critics will say they knew it all along. But if he keeps stacking good days, keeps learning the offense, and keeps forcing Todd Monken to take him seriously, Cleveland may have a real decision on its hands. Because at some point, the question will no longer be whether Shedeur Sanders was drafted too low. The question will be whether the Browns are brave enough to admit they found something real.